Yeah, I guess we'll get started. My name is Robert Sapiro, and I'm the administrator here at Greenacre, a Baha'i Center of Learning. All these wonderful people you see in squares right now represent our art committee, as well as our artists who will be presenting this evening. I'll just say a couple of words about Greenacre, and then we will dive into the real to the real joy of the evening that we're going to experience. Greenacre, as some may know, is a place here in Elliott, Maine. It's a Baha'i Center of Learning. It's been a gathering place of people for around the world for over 100 years. Typically, we're gathering in person, and that, of course, is our desire. Would be our desire to be in person with all of you. But we're taking advantage of the technology that's come our way and the situation to hopefully actually have more of us be able to enjoy and experience this one of our art shows, which we're kicking off tonight. So Greenacre is here along the banks of the Piscataqua River, and it was originally the home of the Wabanaki people. We've been having people come together in various forums to talk about sort of important themes around discourse. Many of them, but I think a few notable ones are about justice, about nobility, that inherent worth of every human being, and about constructive resilience, about the oneness, ultimately the oneness of humanity. And so this art show is part of those important themes. And we've been exploring questions around the importance of race and race amity for so long. The first race, one of the early race amity conferences happened here at Greenacre in 1929. So this continues and will, in this moment, even more than ever, is necessary for us to learn all together about. I will now, I guess without further ado, hand it off to Frank Robinson Jr.
Thank you so much, Robert. And let me just express my sorrow that we didn't dress the same this evening. I thought I thought we had coordinated this. Welcome, friends. Frank Robinson Jr., Operations Manager here at Greenacre, but more importantly, a member of the art committee. Bear with me while I share my screen. So given this series, Pupil of the Eye, this will make show number 6 in terms of how many shows the art committee has put on here. And I'm going to be very brief, but I want to focus on 2 distinct features I feel that bear mentioning about our art shows. One is how we arrive at the theme, and 2 is the fact that discourse is wrapped into the art shows. So sure, in a normal year, if we were on campus, we would hang the art, we'd have a reception, we would have people there, we would have an opening night where we'd have music and poetry. But what's more important, what's equally important to the beauty of the art, is the discourse in and around the show, hence a night like tonight. Secondly, how do we arrive at the theme? Well, I don't know if the art committee has ever put it this way, but I feel like we arrive at our themes based on what the world is crying out to hear. Just going back to art shows for Afrofuturism, why did we choose that? Because Afrofuturism allowed us to break the bonds and reimagine what it is to be a person of color without the chains and binding of what society dictates. After that, we did Inherited Beauty. Why did we choose that? Well, that was a time in the country where to be an immigrant was something that was being demonized. So we wanted to have an art show that really spoke to the inherent nobility of all peoples. So now, Pupil of the Eye. If you take a look at this quote, which is our inspiration, and you'll hear the artist speak on this evening. Thou art like unto the pupil of the eye, which is dark in color, yet it is the fount of light and the revealer of the contingent world. Now, little did we know several months ago that we would be in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. Little did we know months ago that the state of our nation would be how it is right at this moment. And so why is this quote so vital, so important? The 2 things that stand out to the committee is that people of African descent, African Americans, are a fount of light and a revealer of the contingent world. So that we have something special and unique to bring to this country and to the entirety of the world. I think of the contingent world as a world that might be. And so this is what we believe that African Americans can bring, this light and a world that is yet unknown. And I'm going to close by sharing one of the artists who sent in their work. And we had 34 pieces of art and 27 artists, by the way. But one of the artists said this, and I found it very inspiring. People of African descent are the gatekeepers of humanity. Or to put it another way, as the well-being of people of African descent goes, so goes the well-being of humanity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Gaines, and so we can get to what you really came for, which is our artists. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. I want to first of all, thank all of our artists, our panelists for being here. We really appreciate you showing up and giving us your time and your heart. I want to let everybody at home know that we are going to have, well, if we have enough time, we will have a time at the end for Q&A. So if you move your cursor a bit, you'll see some icons pop up at the bottom of your screen. And one of them is an icon that says Q&A. If you click on that, you can type in your questions and send them into us. And we will field those questions to the artists if we do have time at the end. I'm going to intro each artist right before they share. And first, I have the honor of introducing Helen Butler. Helen says, I love process, watching how the germ of an idea unfolds. There is mystery, there is faith, there is trust. This shape-shifting dimension is abundant throughout creation, but most welcomed in the arts. I love that quote. Thank you, Helen. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Helen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Thanks so much. If you knew how difficult or how much I was pulling my hair out to do this presentation, I should have looked at that quote myself. About the faith part. So anyway, I wanted to just share that I have a little presentation. And if you know me, you know that I love the interaction part of any kind of presentation more than I do my talking. So get ready. I'm going to invite you to comment in the chat part. Anyway, the arts can transform society in numerous ways. They can encourage social change, express or reinforce values and ideas. They can talk about history, or they can set an emotional tone. So, those of you who are here, this is your warm-up question. What do you appreciate about this scene? Can you see it? Is there, if you were to express the feeling in your chat, what would that feeling be, and how would you like to express it? Would you like to dance it? Would you like to just chit-chat it? Or, and you can answer in the chat. Let's see if anybody's saying anything. You can't see it, but we, hi. Yeah, the mirror image of the color. I appreciate the colors. I would like to meditate here. Yay, awesome, thank you. So we understand that visual imagery actually invites us to partake of things, right? So, you know, it would be remiss of me to kind of ignore the state of affairs that we're in right now. So I wanted to share a piece with you. Essentially, my background is actually in theater. And so I do art quilts really as a means for expression. And so there's usually a story to any of my quilts. So anyway, I've been really full. And for me, this fullness had to come out in the expressive arts. So I wanted to share this piece with you. And it's based on actually a little story of actually seeing a young girl whose grandmother had just passed away. So that's about as much as I need to tell you. Okay. The name of the piece is Dissonance. There'll be no hugs today. An invading parasite whose name and cause siphon attention from its victims has snatched your grand matron to eternal sleep. There'll be no hugs from the living. Though she would have, without caution, squeezed you in firm affection, but not today. In the noxious sea of contagion, lost grandmas and uncles and aunties and fathers will not warm you, rock you, soothe you. You are alone. Battered by an insistent tide of other inconsequentials ripped from mother's breasts and father's love and kindness. While blind strangers poke at tender places, unaware that they might break you. So, no loving, gentle goodbyes here. Instead, let's join the bruised brigades, releasing pent-up grief. Deeply aware, below the arcing dissonant wails and moans, that pleas will not mitigate habitual transgressions or betrayals. For the deadened ears hear only the braying of maids, mandingos, and mules. I am your sister whose hair you set ablaze. I am your brother whose face you cannot bear to gaze upon. When will the heart of the matter be realized? Where is this oneness that some speak so boldly about? Have you no compass to bring you back home? Yet you are our descendants, taken to adventure, wanderers who fell asleep and awoke, without our embrace to call you to peace. We missed you as you invaded cold lands that froze your hearts. But there'll be no hugs today. We'll return to shelter after burying our pain, patiently invoking his hosts to arouse you. Perhaps a company of those invisible ones can whisper that they love you still, so you will remember. So, what's most interesting about this time period is that Abdu'l-Bahá tells us that we are among the favored ones that are here at this time. And so I'd like your response to this quote. And we'll give you a few moments. So the quote is, "How many blessed souls have longed for this radiant century? Their utmost hopes and desires centered upon the happiness and joy of one such day as this day, this one right here. God has favored you in this century and has specialized you for the realization of its blessings." So, my friends who are here on the webinar, how has God favored or specialized you? To have an open heart with the knowledge of truth. I get to choose differently. Access to the Word of God. Yeah, they're just coming in favored with conceptual understanding to see the big picture dynamics of what's occurring right now. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. So anyway, this is my goal. My goal is to follow this dictate from Baha'u'llah, which says that the true worth of artists and craftsmen should be appreciated for they advance the affairs of mankind. And then my other one, this is like by the center of my being one, is the day will come when the cause will spread like wildfire, when its spirit and teachings will be presented on the stage or in art and literature as a whole. So then I have a question for you. What's coming up is another quilt that was done a while ago. And here it is. Actually, it's two. So what's happening in these two quilts? I have to tell you all, I love the chat here. I'm loving having a conversation with you all. But what's happening? What's happening in these two pieces? Got any ideas? Community gathering, community and joy, love and connection, family and community, family. Woo. One is dance, the other is fellowship, people enjoying being together. Wow, okay, so thank you. Thank you for your responses because, whoops, backwards one. I have to say that these are activities that have been going on in the Black community for decades. So one theoretically could be a children's class. The other could be a youth gathering. And it's actually around theater with a group of theater young people who are listening to a professional theater person. But again, this is what essentially the same dynamic that we've been talking about in the Baha'i community, which is this coming together, understanding the values that are the essential values that are important for a spiritualized community. Again, this has been going on for decades in the Black community. So, the last pieces that I have are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, quick slides of 5 pieces. And then after I finish, Frank is going to show the one that's there as part of the Green Acre show. But these 5 pieces are a demonstration to my mind of this sense of understanding that we are a part of the global community and we are a part of a social movement that Baha'u'llah brings his message to. So here we go. I will give you a moment to actually look at the piece also. And Frank, if you want to put up the piece from, yeah. The end.
So, yeah, this is a piece that we currently have. But Helen, if you want to send all those other 5, you know, we haven't hung the show yet. So, all right, thank you so much. I'm going to vanish and turn it over to Jessica.
Thank you so much, Helen. You know what Frank said about, you know, it says the pupil of the eye basically beholds contingent reality in a way that nobody else does. And I definitely feel like through that presentation, I saw a bit of the world that could be, and wasn't expecting to cry, but I should, because that was great. Thank you so much. Next up, we have E.C. Phillips and his piece of art is Through the Lens of Louis Gregory, a graduate of the Arts Institute of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with an associated degree in specialized advertising. He lived in upstate New York for many years and today serves on the Green Acre Art Committee and is very active in promoting the Baha'i faith through the arts. And with that, I will pass it over to you, EC.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Helen. What a tough act to follow. I'm going to do a lot of storytelling, and I have my image to show as well when I will have it placed up when I'm ready. It was beautiful to see to lead into what I have to talk about. Thank you very much. I want to take you back just 2 weeks ago is what I want to start with. I was asked by the committee to be a part of the panel. And one of the first thoughts that came to my mind when I was asked was, sure, absolutely, I would love to do this. And then that was 2 weeks ago. And as the 2 weeks went by, I kept thinking, why did I say yes? How can I present something? How can I be a part of this, this journey that we're on right now at this time? And then the letter from the National Spiritual Assembly of the United States came out, and the third paragraph in this letter answered the question as to not only why, but why not? And I'm going to read it to you because this answered the very question that I was searching for. It says, they tell us to create a just society begins with a recognition of the fundamental truth that humanity is one. But it is not enough simply to believe this in our hearts. It creates the moral imperative to act and to view all aspects of our personal, social, and institutional lives through the lens of justice. It implies a reordering of our society more profound than anything we have yet achieved. And it requires the participation of Americans of every race and background, for it is only through such inclusive participation that new moral and social directions can emerge. That answered my question as to why and why not. I should be here. I have to be here. The journey to get here in the story that I want to share for the Pupil of the Eye quote to be a part of that show started actually back in 2006. I'm not going to give you all the years, but during that time. When I was back in New York State, there was a call that came out from our National Spiritual Assembly to answer the needs of the Baha'i community in New Orleans after the Katrina. And it was 1 full year after Katrina had hit. And I had the opportunity at the time to go ahead and be a part of that. So I jumped in my vehicle and I ran down there, and I was guided to the local spiritual assembly, and they guided me to be a part of 7 different families in the community, and I was there for a 3-week period. And in that 3-week period, I was working 12, 15, 20-hour days to go around and help any individual that could help. And the assembly guided me, but their guidance was not as firm until I walked up into the house and knocked on the door and said, along with a spiritual assembly member, and I was given the opportunity to be of service. Now, I bring this up because it was so important for me to be a part of what their needs were, not go in and offer any answers or any solutions, but to find out what the needs were. And as I found out all the needs, I was just so thrilled to be a part of the service. I did a lot of work, and a lot of was done. But the most memorable thing, and this goes back to the quote, I looked at this quote. Thou art like unto the pupil of the eye, which is dark in color, yet is the fount of light and revealer of the contingent world. And I did something that I was asked to do by Baha'u'llah in another quote that helped me to understand this quote even better. He asked us to immerse ourselves in the ocean of my words so that we may unravel its secrets and discover all the pearls of wisdom that lie hidden within it. And that's what I did with this quote. I looked at it and I said, I've got to unravel this. We started this journey in the art committee on this quote, I don't know how long ago, 4 or 5 months ago. I can't remember, time is blending together now with the COVID-19 and everything. But when we started that journey, it became one that I really immediately made the connection to each. I found 4 parts in this quote that jumped out at me. Pupil of the eye, dark in color, fount of light, and the revealer of the contingent world. I'm going to spend a little time on 2 of those. And this is where my image, if it could be shown right now, would be part of where the pupil of the eye came into play for me for this quote. This is, this is entitled Through the Lens of Louis Gregory. When I was studying, when I was looking at this quote, I don't want to use the word study, but when I was immersing myself in this quote, I wanted to determine how I can represent this quote the best way that I can. And it came to me as I work here at Green Acre, as I was walking through the lobby and came across the image, photograph image of Louis Gregory on the wall. And he was standing there as bold and beautiful as his image, as his photograph shows. And I said, that's it. That's it. I've got to recreate this. Now I'm going to talk a little technical here for the artists in the room. What I did with this was I've taken the image of Louis Gregory in a portrait and I've created this image. What you see in this pupil or in this dark circle here is the image of Louis Gregory in 12 different layers of paint to build this up. And then the challenge was for me to paint over this with the dark color and to create this as a reflection and bring out this image in the light. When you see this at different lights, you see a different image. You see a different look to it. It gives a different depth to it. My explanation of this painting for me is, if you look at the 9-pointed star as the reflection in the pupil, every pupil has a reflection on it. It also is reflecting in the pupil in the portrait of Louis Gregory in his eyes. And what that represents to me is this inner spirit that he has. As I learned more about him and the depth of his relationship with Baha'u'llah, I mean, I am so amazed at this man. I have fallen in love with him through this exercise. In fact, I have discovered that if you look closely at his portrait, you will see that his left eyebrow is a little bit higher than his right eyebrow. Something that when you get a chance to look, you'll see what I mean. If you look a little closer, you can see images of individual figures on his shoulders in the background behind him. Those represent to me people that he's taught the faith to. And what you see around the iris of the eye is a circular landscape that I call. And this is individuals that he's taught the faith to, that I need to personally, having learned his life, to go and try to find and continue to teach the faith. I'm looking forward to stepping into this. In fact, one of the quick stories I will share, having done this, having reached out already, I found someone who was 3 years old when they met Louis Gregory. And they had a chance to sit on his lap and talk with Louis Gregory and be fed candy by Louis Gregory. And they have this fond memory of this beautiful man feeding them candy, and they will never forget Louis Gregory. And I reached out to the community and discovered this. I think I want to just end, if you can take this off the screen now, I'll end with another quick story about my trip to New Orleans. When I was looking at this quote, and I discovered how important it is for me to break it down, I needed to understand how I can learn from the Black community about how can they reveal the contingent world to me. This takes me back to 2006. When I was in New Orleans, and I was going to an auxiliary board member's house to help her with her home, which she had neglected for one whole year while she was reaching out to the outside community and helping them. I discovered, I came across an individual sitting in an elderly, a very beautiful elderly black man that was sitting on the curb outside. And I stopped and said, "Hello, how are you?" I greeted him, and he greeted me warmly. And he proceeded to talk to me about his situation that he's had for 1 year, because he stayed in New Orleans after the flood. He stayed there during the crisis that was there. He stayed there as part of this. And I asked him, he pointed across the way to his home. And he said, "This is my home." And it was a home with a blue tarp on the roof. And it was in bad shape. And I said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And he said, "Yeah, sit with me." I spent 2 hours with this man. I spent 2 hours learning about the world from this man, talking about the strife, his family, talking about the love that he had for the community that he was in, talking about the auxiliary board member who he knew personally. He was not a Baha'i, but he knew this woman. The community was so tight in that way. My journey to be here tonight came from this 2-hour conversation with a gentleman that I never even caught his name. I never even gave him my name, but I remember him as if he's sitting right next to me right now, sharing this open heart with you, telling you that I have a responsibility, as it clearly says, to act, to be a part of the transformation of this society that we're in right now. And when I was asked by the art committee to step in and do this, and the hesitation was not there, it floored me, because I'm not a speaker. I'm an artist, and I'd rather show my art I'd rather show my meanings through my art. But with this pupil of the eye, I usually do art to create a statement, to say something. With pupil of the eye, I created this piece of art to learn something, to grow spiritually. And with that, I want to conclude with one other passage from that same message from the Baha'is of the United States for our National Spiritual Assembly. And it says this: "To understand and firmly believe that we are all children of God provides us with access to vast spiritual resources, motivating us to see beyond ourselves, to work steadily and sacrificially in the face of all obstacles. It helps to ensure that the process is consistent with the goal to create communities characterized by justice. It gives us the faith, strength, and creativity to transform our own hearts as we work for the transformation of society." Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for the spirit of humility that you bring, and for you having an open heart to listen to him, your new friend, who you taught us. He taught us through you, so thank you for that. All right, next up, we have Gordon Arzu. He created a piece called Guided by the Light. So Gordon was born in Honduras and currently lives in New London, Connecticut with his family. Gordon created his art piece for Pupil of the Eye with these following words in mind: "One can say that through the collective experience of people of African descent, we too, as humans, can see, reflect, and try to understand the reality of our society." And with that, I will hand it over to you, Gordon. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's nice to be here. Strange times, but I think we at a time where we are going to learn and hopefully change many things for the better of the world. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about myself and how I started doing art. Like Jessica said, I was born in Honduras. And since I can remember, I was always attracted by anything that had to do with art. my father is a member of a tribe in Honduras. It's called Garifunas. He left the community when he was younger, but he learned the language, and he also, we used to go visit my grandmother. In the Garifuna is a tribe that's mostly people of African descent that came to Honduras from St. Vincent. A lot of them were people who came from West Africa as slaves. So they went down to Honduras, established a community there. And to this day, still there, people, they have their own food, their own language, their own art. And it's a very interesting life for many of the Garifunas, because I don't know that I don't think Honduras is a place where there's a lot of discrimination. I think it's based on the color of your skin, but it's more like rich and poor. But my beginnings in art, I remember this painting that a friend of my father painted and gave it to him. And it was the head of an African statue and a set of African drums. And I think I was 5 years old when I started to look at that painting pretty much every day. And the colors, the shades, the shadows, everything just spoke to me. And it was, to this day, I have it in my head. And that painting was, to me, was kind of like a revelation that, this is what you're going to do. And you should work towards being an artist. Somehow that painting, like I said, spoke to me. Also, the neighborhood where I grew up in the city, there were 2 or 3 guys in my age range that were extremely great artists. Like, they could draw from their imagination, and every day we would just draw things from the TV, like the Transformers and stuff like that. And little things that, now looking back, there were little things, little details in my life that inspired me to draw, paint, sculpt. So when I came to the United States, I started taking art classes, and I started taking it more seriously. And because when I was in Honduras, I was doing it more like a hobby, and my classmates would buy my pieces, like little drawings here and there, but to me, it wasn't going to be like a career. When I came here, I saw that people really enjoy art and actually go to museums and pay for art. So I started taking more classes, and little by little getting more serious about it. I was going to say that the painting that at my father's house, last time I saw that painting, something happened. There was an accident. Somebody put a hole in it, and I almost cried, because I was going to ask my father if I could buy it from him, but I know that has a lot of significance for him. A good friend of him painted it. So I did a copy of it. It's just like a little drawing, and I still have it, and I use it all the time as an inspiration to keep going. So I don't know if Frank can put up the painting that I'm going to show at the art show. So I'm going to give you maybe a minute or so to look at it and maybe think about what it means to you or what you see. So I'm going to start with something that someone that an artist who really inspired me. An artist, not a painter, but a rapper, who inspired me to actually learn English because I wanted to understand what he was saying when I was in the Tupac Shakur. I don't know if many of you know him, but in an interview he said, if I have to be in this world and I don't get the respect that the next man gets, then I don't want to be here, because God has cursed me to see what life should be. God has cursed me to see what life should be. That was powerful to me, because to me that represents the theme of this art show. He was saying, like I know what this world should be. We should be all live in peace and respect each other. And to me, that's that was so powerful. And the African American community in the United States have been through so many things in a short period of time being here. And I think another quote that I heard a lot is, like, they gave us lemons, we made lemonade. Basically, to me that also it's says a lot about what the experience of the African American community in the United States. We've been through so many tribulations, but here we are. And to show people what life should be, my painting represents the yellow flower. It looks like a flower, but it's actually, to me, represents light. I think it's called the dolly. A friend of mine gave it to me, and I painted it. And it represents the eye. And obviously the center, the black part, is the pupil that filters the light. So that part represents, in particular to me, the people who have sacrificed their lives for us, not just Black people, but the rest of the world, to see what life should be. For example, people like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Harry Tubman, people like you that have put their lives on the line for an ideal, and for us to see, for us to follow their example. That's what that flower represents. It represents them. The young man at the bottom represents the new generations who are going to be inspired by these people. And the names I said, you know, that they're just 3 of them, maybe 4, but there's so many unsung heroes that are alive today doing the work, inspiring others, so that we can, in the future, live in a better place, in a better world. Our kids are going to be the ones who are going to see the fruit of this work. I also have another painting that was all right. So this was something that I finished maybe a week or 2 ago. And it's, I didn't actually put a title on it. It was a gift. It's a gift for a friend. But I was thinking about some names for it, and one of them is I see no changes. And then I started thinking, you know, there's been a lot of changes in the world, and it's just sometimes we only focus on the negative, but I know that every day people are making little changes, little by little, and like I said, maybe we're not going to see what life should be in our lifetime, but our grandkids and their kids are going to see what life should be. So I think that's what I got for now. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Gordon.
We're taking that painting, Gordon. I know you didn't finish your thought. We're going to take it.
Doing the painting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you. We have so many comments coming in on your pieces, on other people's pieces. And I want to remind folks, if you actually have questions that you want to ask the artists, please put them in the Q&A and not in the chat. It's hard to find the questions amongst all the comments. So if you do have questions that you want the artists to address, put them in the Q&A chat box. Gordon, man, I feel like, and I heard I'm reading these people's comments, and I'm seeing the same thing that they're saying. It's almost like your pieces, it's what should be, but it almost also feels like what is spiritually. It's like spiritual perception. So I'm gonna stop talking now that I'm gonna start crying. So thank you very much for your piece. Thank you for the explanations. All right, next up and last to go, we have Inger Elizabeth Gregory. So she has a piece in the show called Recognizing Nobility in Spirit. Inger is a former public school art educator and artist, born in Stavanger, Norway. Her family immigrated to America. Continuously moving from state to state, she found joy and comfort in drawing. She considers herself a lifelong learner and art advocate. And can you properly pronounce where you were born for us, please, Inger?
Stavanger.
Say it again.
Stavanger.
Stavanger. Thank you. All right, and with that, the floor is all yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to start off with a little bit of a personal story, and then show my piece, and then take on a teacher's role because I am a retired teacher, art teacher for over 30 years, but more than 49 years ago, let's see, I had the privilege of being introduced to an educator. and a committed advocate for racial harmony. His name was Nathan Rutstein. I saw his name just recently on a t-shirt that was worn by a feisty old white woman, an educator, Jane Elliott. And the shirt that she was wearing said, "Racism is an emotional commitment to ignorance." And it was signed Nathan Rutstein. So I'm not, and I definitely don't pretend to be knowledgeable about racial injustice. Lately, I've been trying to catch up real hard. We all need to be lifelong learners, because sadly, so much of what we've learned in the past through school is not true. So where do we turn for truth? In a letter by the Universal House of Justice dated 2010, it says, "The perpetuation of ignorance is a most grievous form of oppression. It reinforces the many walls of prejudice that stand as barriers to the realization of the oneness of humankind." So Frank, could you switch me off and show? So what I have submitted for the Pupil of the Eye art show is a portrait of an African-American woman, unnamed. She's not smiling. There's no eye contact. And the background of bricks is still standing. The wall is obviously a metaphor for systemic injustice in education, healthcare, housing, employment, and it goes on and on and on, and I'm only starting to understand. I see in her face, or I tried to express in her face, patience, courage, strength, and resilience. In reading the writings, I'm deeply moved by the visual beauty of metaphors and the power to see the world with new eyes. Have you noticed how many metaphors there are in the writings? For example, in terms of capacity, a mind rich in inestimable value. In terms of systemic thinking, talking about the body of man and all the connections that are there. In terms of sacrifice, a candle, a mirror reflecting divine attributes, clouds, veils, and dust that obscure truth, block the sun of truth, and cobwebs for superstition. I love metaphors. And so then I started to wonder about metaphors. I started collecting metaphors in the writings in the Baha'i faith. And as I was pursuing my master's in education, I came across a book about effective teaching strategies. And the title of the book is "Metaphors Are Powerful Tools for Teaching." Now, we as a global community have a lot of learning to do. The research on metaphors, the use of metaphors as powerful tools for teaching, show that they build bridges of understanding. They can reframe new thinking and add clarity. They build off the familiar. They're compact and impactful. That means that an image, a visual image in a metaphor is worth 1,000 words. And not only that, but the most important thing, it facilitates long-term memory. That means that teachers can talk, and have no effect on their pupils or their students, but oftentimes a metaphor will clarify and bring it on that aha moment. So the manifestations of God are the divine educators. And with this beautiful metaphor of the pupil of the eye, we can see with new eyes. It talks about let me pull it up. It says about the fount of light. And let me just check a note here. The fount of light, that's the light of the Spirit that shines through. And we see when the light of the Spirit shines through over the ages in history, all of a sudden you see the flourishing of the arts in Renaissance. It's amazing. Also about the revealer of the contingent world. That's talking about what it could be. Opportunity to heal, bring hope, and oftentimes, I've often heard students say, had it not been for the arts, I don't know if I could have survived the pain, the hurt, the anguish, the trauma. So the arts provide a powerful tool for the future. Lastly, I just want to mention in terms of building communities, culture and art are the best providers for the people to get to know each other. The arts encourage and celebrate cultural diversity. And in closing, a quote, each sees in the other the beauty of God reflected in the soul, and finding this point of similarity, they are attracted to one another in love. The arts are a powerful tool for reflection, learning, and teaching. Thank you.
Inger, I wish you had been my art teacher. Thank you so much for that. I think you awaken an appreciation and love of art. And I would guess all of us. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Well, it's time for Q&A. I'm going to hand it over to you, Dave.
I'll unmute myself so that you can actually hear me. This has been an amazing experience to, whenever I confront a piece of art, it's like a window. I'm looking for a way in, a way to go inside and see what that universe is. And to have the blessings of having artists who carry us inside to their work and show us the universe inside is truly amazing. And it's truly wonderful. The overall theme that the Art Committee has been working on for quite a while is exploring justice through beauty. And when true justice is truly beautiful, we need to raise our perception, our idea of what justice truly is, and find the beauty in that. And that's what inspires us to try to have artistic expressions of this as we go forward. It seems that most of the questions that we have here are about what is the Art Committee going to do next. So I think in some ways, I don't want to spend time on that right now, but for the artists here, the first question I have is for Ed and Inger. Was there any apprehension of entering this art show not being someone of color? And why was it important for you to be in the show? Maybe Ed, you could go first.
Apprehension, no. There was, I think when the call came, when the artist call went out, I know I sat in on the committee and was part of the discussion around it and all too, but when the artist call came out and I started seeing responses to the call, I had to be a part of it. I needed to act. I needed to be a part of the process. I didn't need to be sitting on the sidelines or behind a Zoom camera. I needed to be in front of the Zoom camera. As I said, when I was asked by the committee to be a part of the panel, that's when more apprehension occurred than actually stepping in and doing the artwork, because I'm not a speaker. I am an artist and I love doing the artwork, but I know that action, it is action. It's not words anymore. It's not just my art. I think one of the most important things I got out of this Pupil of the Eye art show for myself by stepping up and participating is that as I said, I'd like to take my art and make a statement. In this art show, the art and all the art that came in with it, I learned so much. I walked away with an education on what the Pupil of the Eye means, where it goes, how it's going to go into the future. I see a lot of hope in this show. I see a lot of love in this show. I see a lot of depth. So apprehension for participating, no, not in the show, just in the Zoom meeting, that's all.
As a white American, I'm not even American, I'm a white Norwegian that has lived a life I know that has privilege, and being asleep to it for 68 years. It's time for me to own and to empathize and to truly understand. Carol Rutstein posted something on Facebook the other day and I watched it. And it was about Black mothers that had just given birth, wet nursing white babies. And it was so powerful, so hurtful that it truly struck a chord. So we need to experience, to own, and to educate ourselves about this situation and speak up when we can.
The next question, I guess, is for both Gordon and Helen. In your art and in your dealing with visions of greatness as well as difficulties and trials, what do you see in the future for our community through art?
I think the tribulations, problems, all the things that we live day by day are things that personally inspire me. And I think artists, the most important thing that we can do as artists is to create timestamps in history. I know that some art is timeless. You see paintings that were painting hundreds of years ago and are relevant today and beautiful, but we need to create art that speaks of what we're living at the time, in the moment, so that future generations can learn from, our time. That's what I try to do, focus on the human experience and on my work. That's why I paint a lot of faces and faces that have an impact on me and can say, send a message to people. So to me, there's no shortage of inspiration, and through good times, bad times, through pandemics, through whatever is happening at the time, it's more, it's like a fuel for artists.
So this is interesting. First of all, I'm in the last chapter of my life, so I have to figure out, okay, so what am I going to do artistically? So what I see in terms of the future in the community for art, I think that there is a huge expanse that we haven't even begun to explore yet. because the country uses a particular brand of art and has kind of cordoned art off into this nice little convenient space, there are communities that have been using art for eons, but they've been on the margins. So what I would like to see is some of that marginalized art actually move to the center. And so what it means then is it's going to look different. It's going to engage people differently. It's like I found myself recently working with some folks to create even a different kind of art that includes the audience as opposed to our usual, you talk, you sit, I talk, you sit, I talk. That's not a huge number of people. That's not the way they do art. And so what would it mean then if we actually invited Indigenous people to be the center, not periphery of art? Because as we talk about this oneness of humanity, the oneness means that it can't just be done in one way. And we keep going, oh, what's that going to look like? Well, we have to try it. And the other thing that gives me a lot of hope is that Baha'u'llah has given us tools, has given us the tool of consultation, the tools of, you know, community building, so that we've been practicing some of these things. And so what would it look like if we now took some of those tools and began to use them differently in the community? And that's kind of where my hope is it's centered around just a whole different way of looking at. And to me, artists aren't nearly as afraid as other people. You know, it's like, generally speaking, people want, well, here's the way you do something. My perception is artists can be some of the most courageous, because it really does take experimenting to even know your own art. You know, it's like you experiment a little, failure. It's like, but it's not failure. It's trying and then, oh, that didn't work out. Huh, okay, what do we try next? And so I don't know, I'm real excited even though this is incredibly stressful, it feels like, from an artistic point of view, because there's so much energy, there's so much vibrating. So part of what I also see is the arts can dispel some of the tightness, the intensity. That arts can actually be a way of not just diffusing it for the sake of diffusion, but diffusing it so that we can diffuse some of the emotional qualities, so that we can actually do some of the practice work or some of the work that we have to do. And so arts can serve in so many different arenas. And it's just about either inviting us or just using us appropriately, though.
To me, artists are always the ones who are walking without a net, who are out in front in a way that they're doing something new because it hasn't been done, not because it hasn't been done, but because that's where the exciting edge is. And the most effective art is not art that is about the artist. It's art that's about the community that they're in. It's about the vision they see beyond where they're reaching. And I think you and the other artists in the show certainly are showing that. We are going to, over the next several weeks, continue to put up more of this show and transform it into digital format, and hopefully have some other videos up and running. And I think Frank might speak better to some of that. But this has been fantastic. I really enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
I just echo what Dave shared, and the arts become this catalyst so that we can have an elevated discourse, and this is what we're trying to do, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for coming this evening and sharing your insights, your art, and we can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.